I closed the oven door and straightened up, feeling my vertebrae crunch unpleasantly. Age. 67 wasn't a verdict, but my body was a growing reminder of years gone by. Glancing at my Cartier watch, a retirement gift to myself 3 years ago, I noted that I had a little over an hour before Norman and Olivia arrived. The house Howard and I had built 30 years ago in the upscale neighborhood of Upland seemed unusually quiet. After my husband's death 5 years ago, I'd never gotten used to that quiet. Howard was a prominent corporate lawyer, and I was the CFO of Appleton Development. We had built a good life. A spacious 5-bedroom house, 3 garages, a pool that I now rarely used. Too much space for a single elderly woman. Cooked meat from my mother's recipe was usually Norman's favorite meal. It used to be, before the wedding. I wasn't sure he would appreciate it today. Lately, my son had been wrinkling his nose at the sight of home-cooked food, preferring fancy restaurants with auteur cuisine. I wiped my hands on my apron and walked to the window. The fall garden was immaculate. The twice-weekly gardener had overseen every detail. My personally grown roses were already covered for winter. Norman, my only child, 39 years old, a successful corporate strategy consultant, a handsome, confident man. Sometimes I didn't recognize him as the sweet boy I'd raised so lovingly. Now it was as if a wall had grown between us. Not all at once, but little by little, brick by brick, especially after he married Olivia. Olivia. I took a deep breath, trying to suppress my growing irritation. She was the kind of woman magazines called sophisticated. Slender, well-groomed, always with perfect manicures and hair. Her small downtown designer clothing boutique was more of a hobby than a necessity. Olivia's parents owned a chain of construction stores across the state. 3 years ago, when Norman had introduced her as his bride, I'd been overjoyed. He had finally found a life partner after several failed relationships. Howard and I had always dreamed of seeing our son happily married. Howard didn't live to see that day, but I was sure he would have approved of his son's choice. The wedding cost 6 figures. I'd insisted on paying all the expenses, even though Olivia's parents could afford it. It's tradition, I'd said at the time. In truth, I just wanted to make my son happy. Then there was the down payment on their house in an upscale neighborhood near downtown. Then a new car for Norman. Executive class is important for his job. I spared no expense. After selling my and Howard's shares in the company and the insurance payments, I had enough money to provide for a comfortable old age and help my only son. What went wrong? When did our relationship turn into formal visits once a month? When my son started looking at his watch 15 minutes after coming over. When my daughter-in-law started visibly wrinkling her nose when inspecting my old-fashioned interior. The doorbell snapped me out of my musings. They had arrived early. I hurriedly removed my apron, checked my hair in the hall mirror, and opened the door. Norman, Olivia, it's so good to see you. Hi, Mom. Norman awkwardly hugged me and quickly pulled away. Sorry, we're a little early. The meeting ended faster than I expected. Olivia handed me a bottle of wine. Hello, Constance. We brought in a Chardonnay, vintage 2018. It's a great vintage. I noticed her appraising gaze sliding over my simple but expensive cashmere sweater and pants. Thank you, darling. Come in. I've just finished dinner. Oh, Mother. Norman hesitated in the hallway. We were actually thinking of having dinner at the Azura. You know, it's the new Mediterranean restaurant downtown. I made reservations for 7:30. I felt my heart clench. Again. It was the same last time, and the time before that. But I made your favorite dish. Constance, Olivia intervened. Norman and I are watching the diet right now. You know, the paleo diet. No gluten, minimal carbohydrates. Her slender fingers with the perfect manicure rested on Norman's sleeve. Plus, Azura has a delightful chef who worked at a 3-Michelin-starred restaurant in Barcelona. I glanced at my son, expecting support. But Norman only smiled guiltily. I'm sorry, Mom. We can have dinner here next time. You don't mind the restaurant tonight, do you? Of course I minded. I'd spent all day making a dinner that now I'd have to throw away. But what could I say? I didn't want to be the kind of mother-in-law who was always unhappy and causing trouble. No, not at all, I smiled. Sure, we'll go to the restaurant. Give me 10 minutes to change. I sat in the back seat of Norman's car, a brand new executive Audi, listening to Olivia talk about her boutique and the new collection she was curating. Norman occasionally chimed in, focused on the road. All I could see in the rearview mirror were his eyes, the same blue as Howard's, but colder, more detached. The restaurant was exactly what I'd expected. Minimalist design, dim lighting, impeccably polite staff, and prices that would make most people choke. "I've ordered us a tasting menu," Norman announced as we sat down at a table. "With wine accompaniment. You're going to love it, Mom." He didn't even ask what I wanted. My son had never been so cocky, arrogant. I couldn't find the right word. "Sounds wonderful," I smiled, hiding my disappointment. Olivia immediately started talking about her friend Veronique, who had just gotten back from the Maldives. She said it was paradise. Snow-white beaches, turquoise water, impeccable service. They're staying at the Soneva Johnny. Those villas on the water, with a transparent floor so you can see the fish right from the bedroom. Norman nodded. "Yes. Pierce was there last year, too. Said the best vacation of his life." Pierce, Norman's new friend from the right circle, CEO of some tech company. They met at a golf club Norman joined a year ago. Our membership costs tens of thousands a year, but it's important for networking, Mom. The first course change arrived, something tiny on a huge plate, garnished with foam and microgreens. "So, I decided to change the subject. How's that project you're working on coming along, Norman?" "Normal," he shrugged. "Just the usual corporate routine. Mom, I can't discuss details because of the confidentiality agreement. He used to always share with me. I was the CFO of a big company. I understood confidentiality. But now I was just an elderly mother who shouldn't have known about her son's important business." "Constance," Olivia sipped her wine. "Have you seen the new Prada collection? It's amazing. I ordered a few pieces for the boutique." I nodded, although the last thing I was interested in was the new Prada collection. Olivia knew that very well. I was interested in my son's life, but she methodically redirected the conversation to superficial topics every time I tried to talk to Norman. By the third course change, I realized it was going to be a long and tedious evening. Olivia kept talking about her rich friends, their travels, their children attending elite private schools. Norman was mostly silent, occasionally checking his phone under the table. When dessert arrived, some avant-garde chocolate masterpiece with lavender ice cream, I decided to make a move I'd been planning for weeks. "Kids, I have a proposal," I straightened up, getting their attention. "I'm thinking of organizing a Christmas trip for the three of us. An exclusive resort in the Caribbean. Private villa, all-inclusive for 2 weeks. What do you think?" The effect was immediate. Olivia looked up sharply from her phone and Norman stopped chewing. "A Christmas trip?" he interjected. "Are you serious, Mom?" "Absolutely," I smiled. "I've been thinking for a long time that we need to spend more time together. Christmas seems like the perfect occasion. I've already discussed the options with my travel agent. There's an amazing place in Barbados." "Barbados?" Olivia's eyes lit up. "I mean, that's, wow. Celebrities stay there. Private villas with their own access to the beach, a personal butler." Norman looked puzzled. "Mom, it's expensive. Are you sure you can afford it?" I held back a smile. My son was well aware of the state of my finances. He himself had helped me organize the investments after his father's death. $34,000 for the trip was a considerable sum, but not critical to my budget. "Don't worry about the money, darling. I want to do this for us, for the family." Olivia was already texting someone on her phone, her fingers flying over the screen. "That's amazing, Constance. That's just, incredibly generous of you." Her tone had changed. There was that fake respect that only came out when money was involved. "So you're okay with it?" I asked, looking at my son. "Christmas in Barbados?" Norman glanced over at Olivia. It was as if there was a silent dialogue between them. "Of course, Mom," he finally said. "It sounds wonderful. When do I have to give you a final answer?" "Well, if we want to book a nice villa, we'd better decide in the next few days. Christmas dates sell out fast." "We'll discuss and let you know tomorrow." Olivia turned to her phone again. "We just need to check our schedules. I saw the atmosphere at the table change. They were both animated, some silent exchange of signals between them. Olivia could barely contain her excitement, and Norman looked thoughtful, as if he were calculating something in his mind. When the bill arrived, Norman reached for it, but I stopped his hand. "Allow me, darling. I invited you." He didn't put up much of a fight. The amount on the check would have made the average family gasp, but I silently pulled out the platinum card. Thanks, Mom. Norman smiled, strained. Next time it's my treat. He'd said that last time too, and the time before that, that next time never came. On the drive home, Olivia was unusually talkative and even turned to me in the back seat. Constance, which villa are you considering? How many bedrooms are there? Does it have a pool? Is a personal chef included in the price? I answered her questions, noting Norman's occasional glances at his wife, as if warning her not to be too obvious. As we pulled up to my house, Norman, to my surprise, offered to come in literally for 5 minutes. Inside, Olivia immediately asked me to show her the villa options I was considering. I pulled out my iPad and opened the resort's website. Olivia's eyes widened at the sight of the luxurious interiors and stunning ocean views. Divine, she whispered. Just divine. Are you really going to pay for all this, Constance? It would be a joy for me to spend Christmas with my family, I replied, watching their reactions. I so rarely get to see you both. Norman coughed. Mom, that's very generous of you. We really appreciate it. So should I confirm the reservation? I asked bluntly. There was that look between them again. Yes, Norman said. Definitely yes. Great! I pretended not to notice Olivia furtively giving him a thumbs up. I'll contact the travel agent tomorrow and start the booking process. They left suspiciously quickly after that. At the door, Olivia unexpectedly hugged me, for the first time in months. Thank you, Constance. This is going to be an unforgettable Christmas. Something in her tone made me wary. Too much enthusiasm, too much fake warmth. When the door closed behind them, I walked slowly into the living room and sank into the chair where Howard usually sat. Something told me that this Christmas trip was going to be truly memorable, but not at all like they were expecting. The next morning, I called Helen, my personal travel agent, with whom I had worked for over 15 years. She had organized Howard's and my trips to Europe, Asia, and the Middle East, always flawless, always with attention to the smallest detail. Constance! Helen's voice sounded like she was really glad to hear me. How are you? Already thinking about your winter vacation? That's right, Helen. Remember when we were discussing the Caribbean? I've decided to book that villa in Barbados for Christmas for 2 weeks. It's a wonderful choice. You could hear the professional enthusiasm in her voice. Coral Reef Villa with 4 bedrooms, a pool, and access to a private beach? Yes, that's the one. I leaned back in my chair. And I want the full package transfers, personal chef, excursions, all the best. Of course. For you and your son and daughter-in-law, right? Exactly, I hesitated. Helen, can I put a note in the reservation that changes can only be made by me personally? No one else. There was a short pause. Of course, Constance. I'll make a note of it. Are you expecting any problems? No, just, a precaution. You know how young people can sometimes change plans at the last minute. I understand, she said with an understanding smile. Don't worry, I'll make the arrangements. The preliminary cost is about $34,000, taking into account all the wishes. Is that acceptable? Quite, I answered. The sum was considerable, but not critical. With the sale of our share of the company and the insurance money from Howard's death, my finances were in excellent shape. $34,000 was a lot of money, but only a fraction of my annual budget for travel and entertainment. Great, then I'll begin the booking process immediately. You'll need a deposit of $10,000. The rest can be paid closer to the date. Use my card, you have the details. After the call, I opened my day planner and made a note. My little weakness. I still preferred paper records to electronic ones, despite my years as CFO. Howard had always made fun of that habit of mine. My cell phone jingled, alerting me to a new message. Norman was asking if I'd booked the villa yet. It was atypical. Usually he didn't write for several days after our meetings. I replied that the process was underway and received an enthusiastic, smiley face in return. Strange. My son was not prone to showing emotion, even in messages. Over the next week, Helen and I immersed ourselves in the details of planning. Every aspect of the trip was carefully considered, from menus for a personal chef to scheduling spa treatments and private excursions. She sent me a list of extras that could be booked, from diving lessons to a private yacht for the day. To my surprise, Norman called twice, inquiring about the details. The last time he had been so excited about a trip was when he was 12 and we were going to Disneyland. Mom, are you sure there will be good internet there? I might have to work for a couple days. Yes, honey, there's fiber optics and high-speed Wi-Fi throughout the villa. Will someone from the resort staff pick us up at the airport? Sure. Private shuttle service in a luxury sedan directly to the villa. Great, he said quietly. And Mom, thank you. That's really generous of you. Something in his voice made me wary. Too much. Gratitude? Norman had rarely thanked me for anything in recent years, taking any help for granted. 2 weeks into the planning process, I decided to stop by their house to go over the final details and show them the final trip plan. I called ahead, but Norman answered absent-mindedly, Yes, of course, Mom. Tonight, 6 o'clock? Okay, we'll be home. Their home, an elegant colonial-style mansion on a street of historic buildings, always gave me mixed feelings. I'd helped with the down payment, but the interior reflected Olivia's taste-cold modern minimalism, devoid of personality, as if it came off the pages of a design magazine. When I pulled up to their house, I noticed another car in the driveway, a silver Lexus. Guests? Norman hadn't said anything about guests. I lingered in the car for a moment, wondering if I should reschedule, but I decided to call. Olivia opened the door, looking a little worried. Constance, come in, she said with a strained smile. Norman's in the study. He'll be right with you. In the living room, I saw an older couple I recognized from the photos. Olivia's parents, Theodore and Pamela Abbott. We met at the wedding and have crossed paths a couple times since at family events. Constance! Pamela rose to say hello. She was wearing an expensive cashmere suit and a pearl necklace. What a pleasant surprise! Hello, Pamela, Theodore. I nodded to them both. Norman didn't mention you had company tonight. Oh, we just dropped by unannounced. Theodore, a heavy-set man with a commanding face, shook my hand. We were in the neighborhood, so we thought we'd stop by. Something about their behavior struck me as odd. They were exchanging quick glances with Olivia, and on the coffee table I noticed some printouts, pictures of some resort apparently. Constance, would you like some tea or maybe a glass of wine? Olivia was clearly nervous, hastily picking up the papers from the table. Tea, please. I sat back in my chair, trying to look casual. What are those pictures? Are you planning a vacation? Oh, it's just... Olivia began, but she was interrupted by Norman. Mom, sorry, I was on my phone. He came over and gave me an awkward hug. I didn't realize Olivia's parents were stopping by today. That's okay, I smiled. I brought the final plans for our Christmas trip. I wanted to show you and discuss the final details. Norman and Olivia exchanged quick glances. Pamela suddenly coughed and Theodore stared at his phone with exaggerated interest. Of course, Mom, but tea first. Olivia, won't you make some? Olivia hurried into the kitchen, and Norman sat down next to me, clearly tense. So, I began, pulling out a folder of documents. Helen has organized everything just perfectly. Coral Reef Villa, 4 bedrooms, private pool overlooking the ocean, private beach. Sounds amazing, Pamela put in with a strained smile. Yes, indeed, I continued, showing the pictures. A personal chef will cook for us 3 times a day, any cuisine on request. There is a possibility to order a private yacht for a sea trip, diving lessons, excursions around the island. How... generosity, Theodore coughed. And all this just for the 3 of you? Something in his tone made me wary. Yes, just for us. Family Christmas. I turned to Norman. I thought we needed more time together as a family. Norman looked like he'd swallowed something unpleasant. Of course, Mom. That would be wonderful. Olivia returned with the tea, her hands trembling slightly as she set the tray down. Constance, when's the flight out? She asked, not looking me in the eye. December 23rd, 9 in the morning. We'll be back on January 6th. I took business class, of course. 23rd? Pamela interjected, glancing at her daughter. So soon after? After what? I asked. After Norman's corporate party, Olivia put in quickly. It's on the 22nd, it'll be late, and we were afraid we wouldn't have time to pack. Oh, don't worry, I smiled. The flight leaves at 9, so you'll have plenty of time. Great, Norman stood up. Can I see the files? I handed him the folder and he started going through them with Olivia. They were whispering, pointing to something in the papers. I noticed Pamela and Theodore exchanging meaningful glances. So, I interrupted their banter. The total cost is $34,000. I've already put down a deposit of $10,000 and the rest is due by the 1st of December. $34,000? Theodore whistled. That's a lot of money. It's worth it, I said calmly. Nothing is too much for a family vacation at Christmas. Absolutely, he murmured, looking at his wife again. Something was definitely going on. The atmosphere in the room was electrified by some hidden tension. I decided to check my suspicions. By the way, I made reservations at an oceanfront restaurant for Christmas Eve itself. They say it has an amazing view of the sunset. On the beach? Olivia's eyes widened. What about, she faltered, catching Norman's warning glance. What about what, dear? I asked innocently. Nothing, just nothing. She looked away. Sounds wonderful. The rest of the visit passed in a strange, tense atmosphere. Norman and Olivia were suspiciously quiet, and Olivia's parents exchanged glances. As I was about to leave, Theodore suddenly asked, Constance, are all these reservations in your name? Yes, of course, I replied. I organized and paid for it, so it's all in my name. I see, he nodded, and Pamela gave him a warning look. Just before I left, I noticed Olivia whisper something to Norman, and he responded with a brief nod. Something was definitely going on behind my back. In the car, I called Helen. Helen, tell me, has anyone tried to contact you about our trip in the last few days? No, Constance, no calls. She paused. Are you expecting any problems? Maybe. Just to be on the safe side, if anyone other than me tries to make changes to the reservation, let me know immediately, okay? Of course I will. You know I always protect my clients' interests. Over the next 2 weeks, I noticed that Norman and Olivia's behavior became even stranger. Norman suddenly suggested that they meet for lunch, an event so rare that at first I wondered if I had misheard him. At lunch, he was unusually attentive and interested in my plans for the coming months. Mom, have you thought about joining a club? Like a golf club or a yacht club? You could meet new people, expand your social circle. Why? I asked bluntly. I have enough friends and activities. I just thought, you spend a lot of time alone in this big house. Does it bother you just now? I couldn't hold back the slight irony. After 3 years of you dropping by once a month for 15 minutes? Norman wrinkled his nose. Mom, don't start. I'm just taking care of you. Of course you are, dear. I smiled softly. Speaking of our trip, I've added a private tour of a rum plantation to the program. They say it's very educational. Great, he grumbled again. Listen, Mom. What if, hypothetically speaking, we had to change plans? You know, like if I couldn't make it to work, that's it. I was expecting something like this. Norman, the trip's paid for. The deposit is non-refundable. And I specifically asked Helen to include a clause that any changes can only be made by me personally. His face paled slightly. I see, but that's just hypothetical, of course. I'm sure everything will go according to plan. I hope so too, I replied, sipping my wine. A week after that conversation, I met Olivia unexpectedly at the mall. She was standing in a coffee shop, talking on her phone without noticing me. Yes, Mom, everything's going according to plan. Constance doesn't suspect a thing. Yes, the tickets and reservations are in her name, but Norman figured out that you can just show her credit card and birth certificate proving parentage. No, she definitely can't go. I'll take care of that. I quietly retreated behind the pillar, feeling the blood rush to my face. So I was right then. They were planning something behind my back. But what was it? The answer came the next day when Helen called me, clearly alarmed. Constance, something strange has just happened. I got a call from a woman who identified herself as Olivia's mother, Pamela Abbott. She wanted to know if I could add 2 more guests to your reservation in Barbados. And what did you say? Of course, that any changes could only be made by you personally, as you requested. She was, not very pleased. Said it was a family vacation and that Norman and Olivia wanted to surprise you by inviting them. A surprise, then? I grinned bitterly. Thank you, Helen. You did absolutely the right thing. Constance, if I may ask, are you having problems with your family? Let's just say Helen. I sighed. I'm beginning to realize that my family isn't quite what I thought it was all these years. After Helen's call, I sat back in my chair and thought. The picture was starting to become clearer. They were planning to use the trip I'd paid for, but exclude me from it. Olivia's parents were supposed to go instead of me. They were probably going to inform me at the last minute that I couldn't go for some made-up reason. Or worse, just go without me, leaving me alone for Christmas. My own son. My own flesh and blood. I felt a lump rise to my throat. Not grief, rage. Years of neglect, of manipulation, of using my money, all of it suddenly came into view with crystal clarity. How could I have been so blind? The ringing of the phone snapped me out of my musings. It was Olivia. Constance! Her voice sounded falsely joyful. I was just wondering, have you thought about taking a friend with you to Barbados? It must be lonely traveling alone for a woman of your age. Alone? I asked innocently. But it's just the three of us, you, Norman, and me. Oh, of course, I was just thinking. For company, when Norman and I go to the beach or do some outdoor sports, don't worry about me, dear. I paused deliberately. I'll have plenty to do. I've booked us excursions and activities where we'll be together. Ah, I see. She was clearly disappointed. Well, that's wonderful. After this conversation, their behavior became even more suspicious. Norman started avoiding my calls, and when he did answer, he was brief and clearly nervous. One day, I stopped by their house unannounced and heard Olivia talking loudly to someone on the phone in the study. I just had to think of something to keep her from going, maybe slip her a laxative the night before. Or, I don't know, have some family drama. I quietly closed the door and left without making my presence known. I had no doubts now. They were planning to sabotage my trip so they could use my paid-for vacation without me, with Olivia's parents instead of me. 2 weeks later, going through the mail, I found an envelope from the travel agency. Inside were the documents for the trip. Tickets, vouchers, insurance. Everything was in my name, with Norman and Olivia listed as traveling companions. At that moment, I made a decision. I would no longer be manipulated by my own son and his wife. If they wanted a war, they would have one. But by my rules, December 22nd was a cold but sunny day. I spent the morning making final preparations for the trip, checking lists of things, rereading documents, checking transfer times. Our departure was scheduled for tomorrow, December 23rd, at 9 in the morning. The suitcases stood in the lobby, ready to go. I had specially bought a new summer closet for this trip. Light dresses made of natural fabrics, elegant swimsuits, comfortable shoes. No one would say that 67-year-old Constance Redmond doesn't know how to look stylish on the beach. I was expecting a call from Norman or Olivia to confirm a time for the driver to pick us up tomorrow. The arrangement was that I would pick them up on my way to the airport. But the phone had been silent all morning, and it was beginning to worry me. At noon, I decided to call myself. Norman's phone was unavailable. That's odd. I dialed Olivia's number. Same situation. Maybe they're at Norman's company party. But isn't it weird to turn off the phones on the eve of an important trip? I called their home phone, no answer. An uneasy feeling was building in my soul. At 2 o'clock in the afternoon, I decided to go to their house. As I drove up their street, I noticed that there were no cars in the driveway. The front door was locked and the windows were dark. I rang the doorbell several times. Silence. A neighbor walking her dog cast a curious glance at me. Looking for Norman and Olivia? She asked. They left this morning, with their suitcases, said they were going to the Caribbean for Christmas. I felt the ground slipping from under my feet. Are you sure? Positive. I saw them loading their luggage into a cab at about 7 a.m. There were some other people with them, an older couple, Olivia's parents. They really did it, really ditched me and flew away with my tickets on my reservation for my money. Thank you, I mumbled and headed for the car on stiff legs. I sat in the car for a while, unable to start the engine. A hurricane of emotions raged inside me. Shock, disbelief, pain that quickly turned to rage. Finally, I dialed Norman's number. Still unavailable. I left a voicemail. Norman, it's Mom. Please call me back immediately. It's about our trip. I did the same with Olivia's number. Then I called Helen. Constance? Her voice sounded concerned. I was just about to call you. Something strange has happened. Let me guess. My voice sounded unnaturally calm. Someone tried to change the reservation? Not exactly. I got a call from the resort. Your son, his wife, and 2 other guests have already arrived and are trying to check in. They claim you gave permission and couldn't go at the last minute. They have your credit card and some proof of parentage. So they stole my credit card. Or duplicated it. I remembered Norman coming by my house a few weeks ago and asking for my credit card to order me a Christmas present. It all made sense now. Helen, they can't register. It's a scam. I didn't give any authorization. That's what I told the resort manager. They're holding the check-in pending your confirmation. Thank you, Helen. I want to cancel the entire reservation. Completely. Right now. There's been a pause. The entire reservation? Constance, it's a significant monetary loss. The deposit is definitely not refundable, and with the rest of the money is not the problem. I cut her off. I want the reservation canceled immediately, and I want them denied accommodations. I want them to look for another hotel for Christmas. Yep, I understand. Helen sounded sympathetic. I'll get right on it. I'm sorry, Constance. Don't be. It's not your fault. Once I disconnected the connection, I finally started the car and drove home. I felt a rage inside me like I hadn't felt in years. How could he do this? My own son, my own flesh and blood, abandon me on Christmas Day, steal my money, fly off with my wife and her parents. The first thing I did at home was check my credit card collection. One was missing, the one that had been used to pay the deposit for the trip. I immediately called the bank and blocked it. Ma'am, there was a transaction on that card this morning, the operator said. An airport duty-free purchase of $572, so they weren't even shy about using my card for purchases before the flight. That's low. Cancel this transaction if possible, I ordered, and block the card completely. Finished with the bank, I called the airline's hotline. After a long wait and several switchovers, I finally managed to speak to a manager. Ma'am, unfortunately, passengers Norman and Olivia Redmond and Theodore and Pamela Abbott had already checked in and departed this morning. But the tickets were issued in my name. How could they have checked in? A minus Mr. Redmond presented your birth certificate proving he was your son and claimed you were unable to fly for health reasons. He requested a replacement passenger, and given the family circumstances, the replacement was approved. I clenched the phone so tight my knuckles turned white. This is fraud. I want compensation and I want to file a complaint. The manager promised to look into it and call me back, but I knew it was empty words. They'd already left, with my tickets, with my money. After that conversation, I sank into my chair feeling completely drained. The room, which had seemed cozy and festive even in the morning, now looked like a mockery. The Christmas tree in the corner, the decorations, the presents, it all suddenly lost its meaning. My gaze fell on the family photo on the mantelpiece. Norman in his graduation robe, me and Howard on either side of him, all smiling. When did it all go wrong? When did my loving son turn into this creature capable of doing this to his own mother? The phone rang, snapping me out of my bitter musings. Norman's number. Finally. Hello? My voice sounded colder than I intended. Mom? Norman's voice sounded worried. There's a problem with the reservation. We're being denied check-in at the hotel. What's going on? What do you think, Norman? I felt a new wave of anger rising in me. You stole my credit card, forged documents, flew without me with Olivia's parents. What do you think is going on? Mom, you've got it all wrong, he said, a pleading tone in his voice. We wanted to surprise you. You see, your birthday is in February, and we were planning a second trip for you. And we wanted to spend this one with Olivia's parents because, well, it's their anniversary and— Stop lying, I cut him off. I know everything. I heard Olivia discussing a plan with her mother to get rid of me. I saw the messages on your phone. What messages? He stammered. Mom, I swear you've got something wrong. You forgot to log out of the group chat on my computer the last time you came over, I lied, deciding to test my hunch. I saw all your plans, how you were going to elegantly dispose of the old woman. There was a long pause. Then Norman sighed heavily. Okay, Mom, yes, we planned this trip without you. But understand, we needed this vacation. Olivia wanted so badly to show her parents a real Caribbean resort, and we didn't have the money for such a trip. You're not much of a traveler anyway. Don't you dare tell me what I like and what I don't like. My voice shook with rage. You could have just asked. If you'd honestly said you wanted to go with Olivia's parents, I might have paid for the trip for you. But you chose deception. You chose to steal my money and leave me for Christmas. Mom, don't be dramatic. There was irritation in his voice now. We were going to be back by New Year's and celebrate with you. It's only a week. A week? I almost screamed. You abandoned your mother on Christmas. You stole $34,000. And you have the nerve to tell me I'm being dramatic? 34 grand? There was something akin to awe in his voice. Wow, I didn't know it was that expensive. Look, Mom, we'll make it up to you, I promise. Just, can you call the hotel and tell them it's a misunderstanding? We're standing at the front desk right now. We have nowhere to go. No, I said firmly. I canceled the reservation. I canceled it completely, and I canceled the credit card you stole. What? He was yelling now. Mom, are you crazy? Where are we going to live? All the hotels are booked to the gills. It's Christmas. Not my problem. I felt a strange, dark satisfaction. Maybe Olivia's parents could help. They're so wealthy. Mom, please. His voice trailed off. I'm begging you, just call the hotel. Tell them it's a mistake. We'll talk about it when we get back, I promise. I'll explain everything. I have nothing to discuss with you, Norman, I said coldly. You made your choice. Now live with the consequences. I hung up the phone, ignoring his cries. Almost immediately, the phone rang again and again. I muted it and tossed the machine onto the couch. Strangely, I felt no sadness or desolation, just cold, crystal-clear rage, and somewhere deep inside, a painful release. It was as if the veil had finally lifted from my eyes, and I could see the true face of my son, a man willing to steal from his own mother and leave her alone at Christmas. Half an hour later, the phone vibrated again, a message from Olivia. I opened it, preparing myself for another batch of lies. Constance, you don't realize what you've done. We're stuck in a foreign country with no place to live. My parents are terrified. Norman is furious. If you don't rectify the situation immediately, I'm afraid it will ruin your relationship with your son forever. I laughed bitterly. How ironic. She's threatening me with the end of a relationship they've already trampled on with their betrayal. I didn't reply, instead opening my laptop and logging into my email. There was already an email there from Helen. Constance, the reservation has been completely canceled. The deposit is unfortunately non-refundable, but I was able to refund the remaining amount, $24,000, to your card. The hotel has confirmed that your son, his wife, and their guests will not be accommodated. I also received a notice from the airline to refund part of the cost of the return tickets, which is another $3,000 or so. In total, you managed to recover $27,000 out of $34,000. I'm very sorry to hear about your family vacation. If there is anything else I can do for you, please let me know. $27,000. Not bad. I quickly wrote a reply thanking Helen for her promptness and professionalism. Then I stood up and walked to the window. It was beginning to snow outside, large flakes of snow falling slowly to the ground, covering everything in a white blanket. The perfect Christmas mood that now seemed a mockery. The house phone rang. I ignored it. Then the cell phone rang again. Norman wouldn't give up. I turned it off too. Something had to be done about this evening, about this Christmas, about this pain inside. I wasn't going to sit at home and cry about my own son's betrayal. I resolutely walked over to the suitcases still standing in the hallway and began to unpack them. I carefully hung the new dresses in the closet, put the shoes on the shelf, and put the swimsuits in the drawer. Then pulled out her phone and opened the bank's app. $27,000 had indeed already been deposited back into my account. I thought for a moment, then opened another travel agency's website. If I couldn't fly to Barbados tomorrow, it didn't mean I had to spend Christmas alone in this huge, empty house. An hour later, I found what I was looking for. A solo tour of Scandinavia starting in 3 days. It was a very different type of vacation. Not a luxury beach resort, but a cultural journey through snowy cities with visits to museums, concerts, and Christmas fairs. The tour was designed for wealthy retirees traveling alone or in couples. Perfect. I didn't hesitate for a second. I paid for the tour and booked my tickets in business class. Single room in each hotel, all excursions included. I didn't even have to pack a new suitcase. Winter Scandinavia required a very different closet. After everything was organized, I felt a strange calmness. It was as if the fog had cleared, and I finally saw the truth I had refused to acknowledge for so long. My son and his wife only saw me as a source of money. Not a mother, not a person with feelings, just a convenient ATM machine. My phone kept vibrating with incoming messages and missed calls. I didn't read them or call back. Instead, I poured myself a glass of good wine, the Chateau Margaux that Howard and I were saving for special occasions, and sat by the fireplace. "Here's to new beginnings, Howard," I whispered, raising my glass to my husband's picture. "It seems our son is not like you and me." Snow continued to fall outside the window, covering the world with a white blanket. Inside me, the years-long illusion of my perfect family was slowly melting away. In its place grew something new, the realization of my own strength and independence. I was no longer a victim. I was Constance Redmond, a wealthy, confident woman ready to start a new chapter of her life. Free of a toxic relationship with a son who betrayed her trust and love. By morning, my phone was showing 47 missed calls from Norman. I didn't even bother looking through them. I just deleted the notifications and set about packing for a new journey. My own journey. The shrill ringing of the phone jerked me out of a deep sleep. I struggled to open my eyelids and glanced at the clock. It was 7 in the morning. Who would be calling so early? The screen of my cell phone, which was on the bedside table, flashed continuously. I reached for it and saw that overnight the number of missed calls from Norman had risen to 47. 47 attempts to get through, plus 24 texts and the same number from Olivia. I put the phone away, not wanting to start the day with this negativity. Yesterday's shock and rage had given way to a strange calm. I felt like a person who'd walked a long time with a heavy stone on their shoulders and had finally dropped the burden. Yes, it hurt. Yes, the betrayal of my own son had left a deep wound. But at the same time came liberation, from illusions, from self-deception, from the meaningless hope for a relationship that had long since ceased to exist. I got up, threw on a robe, and went down to the kitchen to make coffee. The familiar ritual helped me gather my thoughts. The freshly ground beans, the perfect temperature of the water, the aroma filling the kitchen. It gave the illusion of normalcy in a world that had suddenly turned upside down. The phone rang again as I took the first sip. Norman. Again. I sighed and decided I'd have to answer it sooner or later. Better to end it now. "Yes, Norman." My voice sounded surprisingly calm. "Mom, finally!" He was yelling so loud I had to move the phone away from my ear. "Do you realize what you've done? We spent the night in some disgusting motel on the outskirts of town. All the decent hotels are booked up for the holidays. Olivia's parents are furious. Do you have any idea what kind of situation we're in?" I took another sip of coffee, taking my time to answer. "What kind of predicament?" "We're stuck in bloody Barbados with no proper accommodation. Christmas is ruined. $34,000 down the drain. And all because of your petty vindictiveness." "My vindictiveness?" I felt my anger rising again, but I forced it down. "Norman, you stole my credit card. You cheated me out of a trip I booked. You abandoned me at Christmas even though you knew how much it meant to me. And you're talking about me being vindictive? Mom, you've got it all wrong." There's a little bit of coyness in his voice. "Yes, we wanted to spend this trip with Olivia's parents, but we were going to make up for it. I was planning to take you on a cruise for your birthday." "You're lying," I said calmly. "I heard Olivia discussing with her mother on the phone a plan to get rid of me. I saw your group chat. You weren't even going to tell me the truth. Just planned to disappear and leave me alone for Christmas." There was a long pause. I could almost see Norman frantically thinking up a new lie. "Okay, Mom," he finally said in a heavy voice. "Yes, what we did was wrong. But understand it was Olivia and her parents' idea. They've been dreaming of a luxury vacation for so long, and Theodore, they're having financial problems with their business. I just wanted to help my wife and her family. Can't you understand that? That you chose your wife's family over your own mother? That you stole my money? That you broke the law by forging documents?" I grinned bitterly. "No, Norman, I don't understand that." "Mom, let's not be dramatic." Now there was irritation in his voice again. "It's just money. It's not a huge amount of money for you. You have millions in your accounts after the sale of the company and your father's insurance. 34,000 is a drop in the bucket. I choked with indignation. Just money? Stolen money, Norman. And it's not the amount, it's the fact of it. You stole from your own mother. I was going to give it all back. He raised his voice again. You know very well I have a good salary. I'd have reimbursed you every cent. When? I asked bluntly. When were you going to tell me that? After I discover you'd all taken off without me? Or after you returned? Or never? There was a pause again. Mom, listen. His voice sounded conciliatory now. Let's forget this misunderstanding. Return the reservation and we'll talk about it when we get back. I swear I'll make it up to you, and I'll explain to Olivia that you can't do that. Just, please. We're stuck here in terrible conditions. Olivia's parents have already booked return tickets for tomorrow. It cost a fortune. Olivia and I will be leaving as soon as we find available seats. Just let us have a few days of normalcy. Please, Mom. His pleading almost touched me. Almost. But then I remembered all the years of neglect, all the last-minute canceled visits, all the times he looked at his watch 15 minutes after coming to see me. I remembered Olivia's arrogant looks, her condescending comments about my old-fashioned house and closet. I remembered how they planned to steal my money and leave me alone at Christmas. No, Norman, I replied firmly. The reservation is canceled permanently. I've already paid most of the money back into my account, and I'm not going to reinstate anything. What? He started yelling again. Mom, are you crazy? We're stuck in this hole. You can't do this to us. Me? I felt a cold rage rising inside me. I can't do this to you? Could you do this to me? Abandon me at Christmas? Steal my money? Stop being so dramatic! Norman's voice was breaking with anger. It's only Christmas, one day a year. It's not the end of the world. You could spend it with your friends if you have any left. That hit the mark. Since Howard's death, my social circle had narrowed considerably. Many friends had drifted away, some had passed away. I'd been lonely in recent years, and Norman knew it. I've already found someone to spend Christmas with, I lied, not wanting to show how much his words hurt. And it's definitely not you or your wife. Mom! His voice suddenly became threatening. If you don't fix this right away, you can forget about our relationship forever. I'm serious. He tried to blackmail me, my own son. What relationship are you talking about, Norman? I asked bitterly. The kind where you come to see me once a month for 15 minutes and keep looking at your watch? The ones where I'm just a source of money for you? The ones where your wife barely conceals her contempt for me? That's not true. He was indignant. I love you, Mother. You're my mother. How can you say that? A loving son doesn't abandon his mother at Christmas, Norman. My voice was calm but firm. A loving son doesn't steal her money. A loving son doesn't blackmail her into breaking up the relationship. I'm not blackmailing! He was almost shouting. I'm just saying that if you don't fix what you've done, it's going to destroy our family. Our family was ruined by you and Olivia when you decided it was okay to steal from me and leave me for Christmas. I took a deep breath. And you know what the saddest part is? I would have gladly paid for you to go on a trip with Olivia's parents if you'd just asked. Honestly, no deceit. But you chose lies and manipulation. There was a long pause. When Norman spoke again, his voice sounded cold and calculating. Okay, Mom, I get it. You've decided to play the aggrieved old woman. That's fine. But don't think you're gonna get away with it. When we get back, we're gonna have a serious conversation. And if I were you, I'd think about what happens to your house and your money when you die. It's not like you have anyone but me. No one. That was a low blow. The hint of an inheritance was the last trump card he could play. Are you threatening me, Norman? I asked quietly. You think I should buy your love with an inheritance? Well, you've disappointed me more than I could have imagined. I'm not threatening. He tried to speak calmly, but I could hear the fury in his voice. I'm just reminding you that family is the most important thing you have, especially at your age. You're 67, Mom. How much longer are you going to live? 10 years? 15? Do you really want to spend them alone? I'd rather be alone than with people who only see me as a wallet, I replied, feeling tears coming to my eyes, but holding them back with determination. God, this is so melodramatic, Norman groaned. Olivia was right. You were always so stuffy. Always these recriminations, this guilt, these expectations. You don't come often enough, Norman. You don't call, Norman. I'm so lonely, Norman. Do you know why I stopped coming? Because it's unbearable. Your constant insinuations about how miserable and lonely you are. Your stories about the past, about Dad, about the way things used to be. It's depressing, Mom. It's fucking depressing. Every word he said hit me like a whip. I didn't know he felt this way about me. That all these years he'd seen me as nothing but a burden, nothing but a source of guilt and discomfort. And money, of course. I didn't know you felt that way, I said quietly. Well, now you do. His voice sounded almost gloating. And yes, Olivia does think you're old-fashioned and boring, and so do her parents. They're always asking why you don't find a hobby or something to do instead of clinging to me. I've never clung to you, Norman, I objected, but he interrupted me. What else would you call it? The constant calls, the questions about when I was coming over, the invitations to lunches and dinners. Jesus, Mom, I'm a grown man. I have my own life, my own family. I can't keep running to you all the time so you don't feel alone. I was silent, stunned by this stream of bitter words. Was I really so annoying? Was my desire to see my son more often seen by him as an infringement on his freedom? And yes, Norman continued as if a dam had burst. We took that money without asking, but it's your own fault. You're always bragging about your millions, your investments, your financial well-being. And then you complain about being alone. You know what Olivia said? She said, if your mother's so rich, why doesn't she buy her own friends? And you know what? She's right. You could travel, have fun, find yourself a bunch of rich old ladies like you. But no, you'd rather sit in your big empty house and complain that your son doesn't come. That was too much. I felt something inside of me finally cut off. The last thread that connected me to the image of the loving son I had cherished all these years. Thank you for your candor, Norman, I said after a long pause. Now I know exactly what you think of me and what your wife thinks. And her parents. Mom, that's not what I meant. He suddenly stopped as if realizing he'd gone too far. No, that's exactly what I meant, I said calmly, almost distantly. And you know what? You're right. I can really travel, have fun, make new friends, and I will. But without you and your wife in my life? What? His voice has suddenly lost all aggression. Mom, you can't. I can, Norman, and I will. Don't call me again. Don't come here. Consider your wish granted. You're free of your stuffy mother clinging to you. Mom, stop! Now there was panic in his voice. That's not what I meant. You misunderstood. I'm just upset about this hotel situation. I didn't mean to say all those things. But you said them. I was surprisingly calm. And you know what? I believe that's exactly what you think. This whole situation has only confirmed what I've suspected for a long time. I'm just a source of money and guilt for you. No, Mom, it's not. I'll change the will, Norman, I interrupted him. Don't worry. You'll get nothing. No house, no money, no stock, nothing. There was a deafening silence. I could almost see him frantically thinking of what to say to remedy the situation. But it was too late. Too late! Mom, please, his voice sounded pleading. Let's talk when we get back. I wasn't myself. All those words. I didn't mean them. I swear. You know how much I love you. No, Norman, I don't, I said tiredly. And now, after everything you've said, I doubt it very much. Mom. Goodbye, Norman. I hung up before he'd finished his last words. The phone immediately rang again, but I turned it off. Then I turned off the house phone, too. There was silence in the house, a deep, almost ringing silence. I sat at the kitchen table, looking out the window at the winter landscape. The snow that had fallen last night covered everything in a white blanket, as white and empty as my life is right now. Strangely, I didn't cry. There was no sobbing or hysteria, just a deep, dull ache inside, like something vital had been ripped out, leaving a gaping void. I ran my hand over my face, feeling the wrinkles that had appeared over the years. 67 years. How much longer will you live? 10 years? 15? Norman's words echoed in my head. He was right about one thing. I didn't have much time left. Too much of it had already been wasted on pointless attempts to win the love of a man who saw me only as a burden and a source of money. I got up slowly and walked to the window. Neighborhood children were making a snowman in the yard across the street. Their laughter came through the glass, carefree and sincere. My Norman had once been like that. Laughing, loving, sincere. When did it change? When did he turn into this cold, calculating man, capable of stealing from his own mother and abandoning her at Christmas? Maybe I really was a bad mother? Maybe I was smothering him too much with my love and care. Or, on the contrary, wasn't showing my love enough. Maybe after Howard's death, I was relying too much on Norman for emotional support. These questions swirled around in my head, unable to find an answer. But one thing I knew for sure was that what had happened in the last few days could neither be excused nor forgiven. Some lines can't be crossed, even if you're family, especially if you're family. I walked back to my desk and picked up my laptop. It was time to get down to practical matters. The first thing I did was write a letter to my lawyer, Richard Hartman, requesting an urgent meeting to change my will. Then I checked the details of my new trip to Scandinavia. Everything was confirmed, leaving in 2 days. I closed the laptop and looked at the suitcases still standing in the lobby. I needed to unpack them and then pack new ones, with winter clothes for the northern trip. But before that, I had one more important thing to do. I went up to the bedroom and pulled out of the closet an old box I hadn't opened in years. It contained family photos, documents, letters, the history of our family. I started going through the pictures, setting aside the ones of Norman from infancy to his marriage to Olivia. Each photo evoked memories, sometimes painful, sometimes bright. Here's Norman at 3, a smiling boy on the beach, building a sandcastle. Here he is at 10, proudly holding his first bicycle. Here's high school graduation, university graduation, first job. A life captured in pictures that now seem fake, like an actor's play. I gathered up all these photos and took them to the living room. There, I put them in a box, which I decided to put away in the attic, not to throw them away. I couldn't bring myself to destroy these evidences of the past, but I couldn't see them every day anymore either. When I was done with the photos, I went back to the kitchen and brewed more coffee. Outside the window, the day was growing brighter. The sun reflected in the snow, creating an almost blinding glow. A new day, a new life. I didn't know what would happen next. I didn't know if I would ever be able to forgive Norman and Olivia. I didn't know if I'd ever find the strength to completely give up my relationship with my only son. But one thing I did know was that I would no longer live in an illusion. I wouldn't pretend that our family was perfect. I would not turn a blind eye to manipulation and disrespect. And I also knew that I would have to relearn how to live, for myself, not for others. I had spent too many years adjusting to other people's expectations, sacrificing my own desires for the happiness of others. It was time to think about myself. The phone on the desk vibrated again. Another message from Norman. I ignored it. There would be more calls and messages later, threats, pleas, promises to make things right. But right now I needed time to heal, time to realize how I really felt, time to decide how to move on. In the meantime, Scandinavia was waiting for me. Snow-covered cities, museums, concerts, new acquaintances. Life didn't end with my son's betrayal. It was just beginning, a new chapter full of unknowns, but also new opportunities. And for the first time in a long time, I felt something akin to anticipation. Christmas morning greeted me with silence, the kind of deep, almost palpable silence that only happens in large, empty houses. I woke up early, a habit developed over decades of business life that had not disappeared after retirement. Outside the window, a light snow was falling, covering the world in a blanket of white, a picture-perfect Christmas picture like a postcard. Just a week ago, I had envisioned this morning very differently. A warm Caribbean breeze instead of freezing air, the sound of the ocean instead of silence, Norman and number. I firmly shut that thought down. No more living in fantasies in which my son was a loving and caring man instead of what he really was. I threw on my robe and went down to the kitchen. I made coffee and toasted some toast, a simple breakfast for a single woman on Christmas Day. Strangely, I didn't feel the sadness or despair that usually accompanied holidays spent alone. Only calmness and some new, unfamiliar lightness. The cell phone on the kitchen table vibrated again, another message from Norman. There had been dozens of them over the past 2 days, ranging from angry accusations to tearful apologies. I hadn't read a single one. Yesterday, I blocked his number, as well as Olivia's and her parents' numbers. Let them enjoy the consequences of their actions without the opportunity to vent their outrage on me. Today, I was going to have to spend the day all alone, for the first time in years. In the past, I had always tried to fill the holidays with visits, invitations, charity events, anything to avoid being alone with myself. Now, however, I decided to face that loneliness head on. After breakfast, I sat in a chair by the fireplace with a book I'd been meaning to read for a long time, but hadn't found the time. The clock ticked, the fire crackled, and the snow continued to fall outside the window. A perfect Christmas for a man who had finally begun to appreciate his own company. Toward noon, the doorbell rang. Helen, my travel agent, stood on the doorstep with a small gift basket in her hands. "Constance, Merry Christmas!" She smiled, holding out the basket to me. "I was passing by and thought I should personally deliver your documents for your trip to Scandinavia and to wish you a happy holiday." "Helen, that's so nice of you." I was genuinely happy to see her. "Come in, please. I was just about to make tea." In the living room, Helen handed me a folder with documents for tomorrow's flight, as well as a gift basket with a bottle of good wine, chocolates, and other holiday treats. "You weren't supposed to," I began, but she gently interrupted me. "It's the least I could do after everything that's happened. Besides, you're one of my longest and most valued clients." We sat by the fireplace, drinking tea and talking, not just about the upcoming trip, but about life in general. It turned out that Helen was also a widow, her husband having died 3 years ago. She told me how hard it was for her to learn to live alone after 30 years of marriage. "Do you know what helped me the most?" she asked, sipping her tea. "I finally started doing things I had always wanted to do, but had been putting off because of family commitments. Traveling, not just for work, but for myself. Painting, going to classical music concerts that my husband hated. It was like I was getting to know myself all over again." Her words resonated in me with a deep understanding. How many times had I given up my own desires for others? How many times have I put something on hold that never came to pass? "And how did you like what you learned about yourself?" I asked with a slight smile. "Oh, it was a real revelation." Helen laughed. "It turns out I love jazz and hate opera. I love spicy food, though I've cooked bland dishes all my life because my husband couldn't stand spices. And imagine, I discovered that I was perfectly capable of doing minor repairs around the house, something I'd always thought of as a man's job." We both laughed, and I suddenly realized that I hadn't laughed so heartily in a long time. With Norman and Olivia, I was always on guard, weighing every word, afraid to say the wrong thing. With Helen, I felt free and comfortable. As she was about to leave, I suddenly decided, "Helen, would you like to join me for Christmas dinner tonight?" "Nothing fancy, just a turkey I was going to cook for myself, a nice bottle of wine." I hesitated. "Unless, of course, you have other plans." Her face brightened. "I'd love to, Constance. I was going to spend the evening alone with a book and a glass of wine. Your invitation sounds much more appealing." After Helen left, I set about preparing dinner with unexpected enthusiasm. I got the finest china crystal silverware that was usually only used for special occasions. Christmas dinner with a new acquaintance was definitely such an occasion. As I cooked the turkey from a recipe Howard's mother had given me long ago, I caught myself thinking about how much my life had changed in the past few days. A week ago, I'd been living under illusions about my family, clinging to relationships that brought only pain and disappointment. Now I was on the threshold of a new life, unexplored, frightening, but exciting at the same time. Norman and Olivia's betrayal, painful as it was, had been the catalyst for a change that had been coming for a long time. It had torn the veil from my eyes, forced me to face the truth. My son had long ago stopped seeing me as a person. For him, I was just a convenient ATM, a source of funding for his ambitions and whims. But worst of all was the realization that I had allowed this to happen. I had turned our relationship into a transaction, my money in exchange for his time and attention. I was buying my own son's love, not realizing that true love couldn't be bought. The doorbell rang, snapping me out of my musings. Helen arrived exactly at the appointed time, with a bottle of champagne and a small gift wrapped in brightly colored Christmas paper. The evening passed surprisingly easily and pleasantly. We talked about traveling, books, music, everything except my family drama. Helen turned out to be an interesting conversationalist with a subtle sense of humor and a broad outlook. By the end of the dinner, we were already discussing the possibility of attending a classical concert together after my return from Scandinavia. You know, Constance, Helen said as we sipped coffee and dessert, I have a small group of friends, mostly women our age, many widows or divorcees. We meet once a month at a book club and sometimes we travel together. You'd love it there. Maybe you'd like to join us next time? I felt warm inside, not from the wine, but from this simple, sincere invitation. I would love to, I replied, when I get back from Scandinavia. After Helen left, I sat by the fireplace for a long time, thinking about today. The Christmas I'd been so afraid to spend alone had turned out to be one of the most enjoyable I'd had in years. No tension, no fake smiles, no constant feeling that I had to apologize for something. The next morning, I woke up with a clear head and a firm decision. After packing my bags for a trip to Scandinavia, I called my attorney, Richard Hartman, and set up an appointment immediately upon my return. It was time to revise the will. Not out of revenge, I had long outgrown that feeling, but for practical reasons. I no longer wanted my money and assets to go to a man who saw me only as a source of funding. Instead, I decided to set up a charitable foundation that would support lonely older people, those who had been abandoned by their families or who had never had children. A fund that would help them not to feel unwanted and forgotten, give them the opportunity to travel, to do art, to find new interests and acquaintances. Perhaps I will leave some of the money to Norman. Not because he deserves it, but because, in spite of everything, he is my son. But it would be a token amount, enough to keep him from contesting the will, but not enough to maintain the lifestyle to which he had become accustomed at my expense. Before leaving the house, I checked the mail one last time and saw a new letter from Norman. My first impulse was to delete it without reading it, but something made me open the message. Mom, we're back in Upland. It was a terrible trip. All the hotels are full. We had to stay in some motel on the outskirts. Olivia's parents are furious. They think it's my fault. Olivia won't talk to me. Everything's falling apart. Please, let's talk. I know what I did was awful. I don't deserve your forgiveness, but I'm asking for a chance to explain. I'll come over anytime you say, please, Mom, Norman. I reread the letter several times, trying to figure out how I felt. There was no anger, no gloating, not even regret, just weariness and a kind of detachment, as if the letter were from a stranger, not my only son. I closed the mail without replying. Perhaps someday I would be ready to hear his explanation. Perhaps in time the pain would subside enough that I could face him without feeling that heaviness in my chest. But not now. I need time now. Time for myself. Time to heal and build a new life. I hailed a cab to the airport and took one last look at my house. Big, elegant, full of memories, both good and bad. Perhaps when I return from Scandinavia, I'll decide to sell it. Too much space for a single woman. Too many ghosts of the past. The airport was noisy and crowded. The post-Christmas rush, travelers returning home after the holidays. I checked in and headed to the business lounge where I planned to wait quietly for boarding. There were a few people in the lounge, mostly businessmen with laptops and tablets. An elderly couple sat in the corner, talking softly about something. I settled down in a chair by the window looking at the runway, where airplanes one after another were pulling away from the ground, taking passengers to different corners of the world. Excuse me, is this seat available? I turned at the voice and saw an elegant woman about my age, with short silver hair cut short and attentive blue eyes. Sure, I smiled and gestured for her to sit down. Thank you. My name is Eleanor Page. She held out her hand. Are you flying to Stockholm? Yes, and then on a tour of Scandinavia. Constance Redmond. I shook her hand. What a coincidence. I'm on that tour too. She perked up. A Scandinavian Winter's Tale by Nordic Explorations? That's the one? I raised my eyebrows in surprise. Are you traveling alone? Yes, my husband died 5 years ago and the children live in Europe. I'm used to traveling on my own. She smiled. And you? Alone too, I answered simply. And a widow too. We got to talking. Eleanor turned out to be a former professor of art history, a passionate traveler and collector of Scandinavian design. She had already been to Stockholm, Copenhagen, and Oslo, and was happy to share her tips on places to visit besides the official tour program. And after New Year's Eve, there's the traditional Helsinki Light Festival, she said enthusiastically. The whole city turns into a magical illumination. I specifically chose this tour to see it. I listened to her, feeling the anticipation growing inside. It had been so long since I'd traveled just for fun, without having to adjust to someone else's preferences or schedule. You know, Eleanor said suddenly, there are several other single women our age in our tour group. We plan to stick together during excursions and evening activities. Would you like to join us? I'd love to, I replied sincerely. When the boarding for our flight was announced, we headed for the gate together. On the way, Eleanor introduced me to two other women from our tour: Margaret, a former surgeon from Boston, and Judith, a gallery owner from Seattle. Both were pleasant, intelligent conversationalists with a subtle sense of humor. On the airplane, I got the seat next to Eleanor. As we settled into the comfortable business class seats, I couldn't help but think about how strange and unpredictable life is. A week ago, I had planned to spend Christmas in Barbados with my son and daughter-in-law, who, as it turned out, saw me only as a walking ATM machine. Now I was flying to Scandinavia with a group of interesting, self-sufficient women who seemed to appreciate me for who I was, not what I could give them. To new beginnings, Eleanor said, raising the glass of champagne offered by the stewardess before takeoff. To new beginnings, I echoed, clinking glasses with her. The plane accelerated down the runway and lifted off the ground, gaining altitude. Below was upland, my home, my past life. The unknown was ahead, frightening but exciting at the same time. I didn't know what the future would bring, but for the first time in a long time, I was ready to face it with an open heart. My phone vibrated in my pocket, another message from Norman. I didn't bother to read it. Instead, I turned to Eleanor, who was talking about Scandinavian architecture, and let myself immerse myself in the conversation, leaving the past behind, at least for the duration of this trip. There would be plenty of time to make decisions about the future of my relationship with my son when I returned. For now, I had to learn the most important art of all, the art of living for myself.